Welcome to this ordinary meeting of Hunters Hill Council, number 4458. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet tonight and the waters surrounding, and pay my respects to elders past and present.
We thank you, Lord, for the honour of being called by our fellow citizens to this office of honour and trust. Give us grace, diligently and honourably, free from private interest or prejudice, to discharge the duties entrusted to us, to the common good and in your sight, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please have a seat. We're a little late starting tonight because of a technical difficulty. I apologise for that. Are there any apologies? We received a note from Councillor McLaughlin. She won't be able to join us tonight. And there's nothing else there. Direct declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. I'll move to the confirmation of the minutes. Moved Councillor Collins, seconded Councillor Miles. Is there any discussion from the minutes? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. My question I raised 13.6 on page 10. I'd like to raise a motion as a matter arising from that.
Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the council resolve to plant at least 2 street trees in front of 29 Church Street.
Seconded. Councillor Sanson. Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just briefly, if you go along Church Street, there's complete planting except for that location in front of 29. The plantings that have been placed in front of the recent development at that location will not provide a canopy of any sort, and I think we owe it to the residents that live and pass through that area to complete that street canopy and make sure that we do maintain the tree environment of the public space along that road. So I would see it as a priority and something that will complete what has been an eyesore for a long time.
Thank you. Could I just refer back to the General Manager? Do you see any problems with planting street trees in that location, General Manager?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I might have to defer to the Director of Development and Regulatory Services, who's more familiar with the site.
Obviously, there's a street theme, street tree theme in the street, so we will be looking at that in accordance to the recommendation, in accordance to the question without notice. We'll be referring this to our Parks and Landscape Coordinator to ascertain exactly the species and type and the leaderage for planting 2 trees. Obviously, there's an impact on budget, which we need to review, and I'm sure we can consider continue the theme of the street with regard to the tree species.
So no concerns.
No.
Anybody against?
Just a question through you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Miles.
Is there any reason this should be dealt with as a motion and not as a request at the start? It seems trivial to be a motion of council. This can be dealt with as a matter of course, can it not?
Could be.
Yeah.
It could be.
Now that we've requested it.
It could be. Anybody for? Councillor Sanderson, do you wish to speak for?
Look, I think there's a fair bit of evidence there about that particular structure on that corner. There is certainly a gap in the foliage, and I should support Councillor Williams' motion. We have a motion to council. I'm sure it's going to be done rather than referring it off. I think we're going to take responsibility for that and act on it.
Anybody against? Councillor Collins?
I'm not against it. I just don't know enough about it. So I'm just of a mind to maybe ask council to look at it, and if it deems it should be the case, then perhaps do it. But this is a new issue. I don't want to go and vote to plant trees when I don't know anything about it off the spot. But I'm not against it. But
Thank you.
I don't know.
Anybody for? Against? I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Right of reply.
If you need right to play, yes.
I think I did. Mr Mayor, the response from the staff doesn't say it can't be done or shouldn't be done, but it doesn't say it's going to be done. So there's no reason why it can't be done if council decides to do it. I think if we left it to the outcome of the question, the response to the question, then it may be done 6 months, 12 months, 2 years' time. It's my view that we need to give council some direction on the priority of this, and I believe it's pretty obvious that that streetscape needs to be maintained, and that gaping hole in that streetscape needs to be fulfilled. The staff can select the tree species. They've already said that it can be done, so it's just a matter of priority. And the way it's worded in the response in the question is that it'll be done at some later stage. I think it needs to be done now.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? It's lost. I think we'll go through the process which is there. Thank you. Councillor Collins.
On another matter,
Yes?
I'd just like to draw attention to a couple of questions without notice raised by Councillor Williams, which is namely 13.4 and 13.5. Footpath on the Seven to Point Road, Woolwich, and also out in Ferry Street. Now, we've received a priority list of footpaths in the council bulletin last week, and one of those, the Ferry Street one that Councillor Williams has suggested, is on this list. And look, I completely agree that these need to be fixed. But I'm concerned at the response that we've got here from council suggesting that one of them is going to be done within the week and another one within the next 3 weeks. Was that the case before this was raised by Councillor Williams?
General Manager?
Through Mr Mayor, I'll need to take that on notice because I don't have the program in front of me. I apologise.
Okay, then look, my concern is that I brought a motion here a month ago about prioritising the restoration of our infrastructure and catching up the backlog, of which footpaths was a large part of that. And at the time, the response from Councillor Williams was that my motion was a waste of time and that council are already doing this. Now, we already have a big list here of, I can see 17 footpaths in high traffic areas that are rated at a 4 level, which means they need to be fixed up. My motion originally was to prioritise dealing with this issue, which was voted against by Councillor Williams, and yet he seems okay to micromanage the particular footpaths that he wants done. And I'm trying to understand, if I want to get footpaths dealt with in this council area, do I need to go one by one and ask a motion of council, a question without notice for each of these footpaths? Because I'm quite happy to submit this with all the footpaths as a question of notice to find out where they are on the maintenance schedule. Or can we have an overarching motion to suggest that perhaps we prioritise dealing with these and not just pick our little pet projects, because that doesn't sound very consistent, and I think it's micromanagement and we're not going to get the best outcome. I would be very interested to find out if, in fact, by raising a question of notice, a question without notice, that these footpaths have jumped the queue. And if that's the case, that to me is not acceptable. We need a coordinated approach run by council. I understand the pressure that's put on them, but what I was trying to initially get with my original motion was to prioritise it as a whole so that council can focus on it rather than basically interfere with the work schedule, which is not our job.
Very good. So your question is, did these proposed jump the queue?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We'll come back to you with an answer on that. Anything else? Councillor Williams.
I believe he's entitled to that.
Well, you're not entitled to get up and speak.
Well, I think do you have a question, Councillor Williams?
Well, my question, Mr. Mayor, would be, are councillors entitled to ask questions without notice on a range of issues before they're aware of issues? Are we entitled to ask questions?
I think we can ask questions. I think it's a fair question. We're allowed to ask questions. Do you have any
It's up to
questions?
staff to come back and say, oh, well, it's on this level of a priority. I'm not telling them to do anything, am I?
No,
I'm just asking a question.
ask a question, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we do have a right.
It's been raised with me as a representative of the community or the constituents.
Oh, do you have a right to ask a question of the council? Of course. Yeah. I'm sorry, did I misunderstand the question?
I don't know. But
You do.
I just find it amazing that I've been called to task for asking a question that is a safety issue in the municipality.
Yeah.
And if the council staff want to come back to me and say, well, it thinks on the priority list and it'll be done in 6 months' time, that's their right. I'm not
Yes.
asking them to do anything, am I?
No.
No, thank you.
Thank you. I have a question, Councillor Williams. The significant injuries to residents over the last 12 months, I was wondering if you could check with the General Manager that we've got a list of all of those people who were injured over the last 12 months that you know of, because we need to inform the insurer of that. So if you could help us with that, that would be helpful outside the meeting, not inside the meeting.
No, but Mr. Mayor, that was a letter from a resident that I'm responding to there, which council has, and they're quite entitled to go back to that resident and find out who those people were, if they know. I know they've said to me that there was at least 2 serious incidents.
You don't have their names.
No, but
Okay.
I think council can just ring up the resident and find out.
All right, thanks very much.
So not several.
Is there anything else that related to this, the minutes? Councillor Sanderson.
Mr Mayor, there's an obvious mistake in the minutes at the bottom of page 3, where the minutes record that a matter was resolved, where in fact below that it says the motion being put was lost. So that resolved obviously should read as moved.
So item 2, bottom of the page, the motion being put was lost. Is that your?
Yeah, well, that's what the minutes record at the bottom of the page, but further up it says the resolved. In fact, the word there should be moved because it wasn't resolved.
Yeah.
No, just a point of clarification. I think that where it says resolved, that's just an example within.
Oh,
That's just an example that's being put.
okay.
I think it's correct as it is.
Okay, fine, thank you. The other one I was going to ask about is my question without notice 13.8, where I asked the question, could councillors be advised of the quantum of fees anticipated to be paid to the 3 suitably qualified design consultants to engage to explore options and provide advice and costings associated with options proposed. The answer is that one quotation has been received. When further 2 questions are received, it'll be answered. Does that mean at this point we've simply asked for quotations and there has been no expense on these consultancies?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
So we've called for quotations from 3 sources. We've got a quotation from 1. When will we have the quotes for the other 2?
Through you, Mayor, that's exactly right. We've asked for 3, we've received 1, and we're still probably waiting for the other 2 to come in end of this week.
Okay. Well, my question at this stage is, does that mean that there has been no outlay, there won't be any outlay until we accept one of those quotations?
I would guess so.
Yes. Oh, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Councillors, anything else related to the minutes? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried with the amendments. Thank you. Straight 4.1. 4.1, development application determined under delegated authority. Councillor Williams. Seconded Councillor Crassoy. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to ask a question in relation to the first item, which is DA 10313. Is it usual just to, on a large site like this, just to leave it up to the applicant as to where they place the replacement tree? Because it's an extremely large site, trees being lost, the amenities being lost at a specific location. I'm just wondering, does council normally just leave it up to the resident to put it, or the applicant to put it wherever they like?
Can I imagine?
Through you, Mayor. In this particular one, because the site is large, they can put it in a cluster of other trees, or they can. It's when considering the size of this allotment, it is up to the applicant. You'll find that other applications with regard to trees, we nominate a location. So in this particular case, it's within the grounds of the property.
I find it unsatisfactory, Mr. Mayor, that not taking into account restoring the amenities that's been lost in the location which the trees been removed. And again, I note that they're not tree replacements, they're lower canopy replacements that we've paid. So I just think it's unfair on the community there to lose that amenity.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. 4.2, development applications determined by the Development Control Unit in March 2019. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Crassoy. Councillor Williams.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion on this? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Miles.
Yes, I just ask if I could move forward items 5.1 and in succession after that item 9.1, being the establishment of community advisory group for Baronial Park project, being 5.1 and 9.1 minutes of the inclusive place-based panel meeting for the 19th of February.
Is there a reason for that?
Just because we have one person in the audience that wanted to see those two particular items.
We've got a second for that, Councillor Collins. Any discussion? Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor Miles. Good suggestion. We'll move to item 5.1.
Move the recommendation.
Moved. Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Williams. Councillor Miles.
Mr. Mayor, this is obviously the establishment of a community advisory group for the Baronial Park project to oversee not only the improvements that we're going to be undertaking in Baronial Park, or that we're looking to undertake in Baronial Park, but also to guide the process of the plan of management. Now, having been intimately involved in the last process of planning the plan of management for Baronial Park, I think it's very important for council to make sure that we have a widespread consultation process, and given the scale of some of the projects that are likely to be going ahead at Baronial Park, I think it's great that council staff have taken on this initiative to not only undertake a plan of management through a consultant, but also to include all these various community groups. Councillor Crassoy has also suggested, and I'm happy to make it part of the recommendation, that we include a member from the Food and Wine Festival in the.
No. That was just on the
just for the
consultation.
Okay, that's fine. In so moving, I would also like to nominate as a community representative, if I may, for that advisory group. I think it's important that the two councillors that are involved in that process are briefed very widely on what it is that the community want to happen up there, and have a substantial advocacy role in making sure that happens, and those views being put forward can be put into the plan of management process moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Anybody wishing to speak against? For? Councillor Williams. Councillor Craswell, or Councillor Williams. Sorry, I think you were first, Councillor Williams. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I agree. It's very important to engage with the community on this issue in particular. It was one that last time the plan of management was worked through was one that I think, as the General Manager has pointed out, dealt with individual groups rather than as collective. And what's proposed here is to have a more collective approach so that everybody can see each other's views and come to an agreement at the end of the day. It's quite critical that we get it right. And it's quite critical that we don't enter the heated debate that came out of the last process. Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to be one of the council representatives on that. I followed it with great interest during the last process, and I can bring a range of not only environmental skills but also community understanding of the issues as they were then and as the issues are now. So I'm quite happy to be nominated as one of the representatives from the council.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Anybody wishing to speak against? For? Councillor Craswell.
I don't have much to say. I think the others have covered it all, though I was hoping to put my hat in the ring as well. I've had a bit to do with several of these community groups. I live near Baroni Park Oval, and I've been watching the last plan of management as a resident, and I'm quite excited about this new review. But if it's a case of who got in first, then I guess I'm too late, but I just wanted to chuck myself in there as well.
All right. No, I think we should consider everybody. Anybody wishing to speak against? For? Any further discussion there?
Councillor
Collins.
Are we going to take a vote on?
We will do that. Councillor Collins.
Yeah,
do you wish to say something about the...
no, I think everything's been said.
No. Sure. General Manager.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the recommendation point 3, and the recommendation is that council nominate the two councillors, and then number 4 is that council seek representation from the following groups to participate in this advisory group. If the councillors are happy to list the groups that are listed in the body of the report, so that would be the Hunters Hill Trust, Bush Care, Fauna Flora, Hunters Hill Rugby Union Club, Veronia Park Public or Primary School, Ryde Hunters Hill Cricket Club, and Gladesville Ravens Netball Club. So if we could include...
Is there any reason why we couldn't have 3 councillors on the committee?
I think it would be, that's a lot of councillors. I think 2 is just fine, and it's a good balance.
Is there any reason why we can't have 2 councillors on the committee, General Manager?
Through Mr. Mayor, it's at the discretion of the council.
Okay. All right. Councillor Collins, do you wish to speak to that?
Well, no, I think the recommendation is 2, so I think we'll just take a vote on who those will be, Mr. Mayor.
I can speak to that.
Councillor Craswell.
It's a good question, Mr. Mayor, and if it's an opportunity for us as councillors to suggest that we have 3 council representatives on there, then I think the 3 of us who've put our hands up to do it obviously show a passion and an interest, and I think we all bring different skills to the table. So if I could suggest an amendment that we just change it to 3 councillors, and that could tidy the whole thing up, but sure, if we want to go to a vote.
Okay. So is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Williams. So we've discussed the amendment to the motion. Do you wish to speak further on that?
I said enough.
No. Anybody wish to speak against? Councillor Collins has spoken against. Anybody else? Councillor Miles? Can I put the amendment to the motion that we have 3 councillors on that committee?
Actually, if I can,
You're welcome to speak again, sure.
I'd like to also nominate as well, so we can have 4 councillors.
Okay, well, the amendment we're dealing with is to have 3 councillors on there. I'll put the amendment to 3 councillors. Those in favour? Against? So we've got 3 councillors, so you're moving an amendment that it becomes 4 councillors.
Well, look, no, I just, if everyone's going to do it, then I will put my hand up as well. I think it should be 2, but if it's going to be an unlimited number, then I'd like to nominate as well.
Right, there's a seconder for that motion for 4 councillors on there.
Sorry, no, that's not my.
Your amendment. Your amendment is to have 4 councillors.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that I'd like to nominate as well.
As one of the 3?
Right.
So you'd like to nominate as one of the 3?
Yeah, look.
All right?
Yeah.
Okay. How would you like to do this, councillors? Are you happy to do it with a show of hands?
Yes. 3 votes each. So there's 3 reps. Which is what we did last time.
3 votes each, yeah, sure.
Can I ask, is the mayor are you going to be sitting on this or not?
I'm on all committees, so I may attend from time to time, but it won't be a committee I attend all the time.
Well, should the deputy mayor then be part of this committee? If
Not necessarily.
No?
No. I think the mayor's the ex officio on all committees, but the deputy mayor is not ex officio on committees.
I think this is a community advisory group. I don't know if it's actually, is it technically a council committee?
Well,
through you,
they're basically all advisory groups we have on council rather than committee, even just by what we call them. So the first person to nominate was Councillor Miles. Could I see show of hands for Councillor Miles? Councillor Miles, congratulations. Show of hands for Councillor Williams. You were the second one to nominate. Councillor Williams. That's 4. That's carried. Councillor Williams. Show of hands for Councillor Crassoy. That's unanimous. So we've got the 3 councillors. Thank you very much. So it's Councillor Miles, Councillor Williams and Councillor Crassoy. If you feel that I need to attend the committee and there's a particular matter you'd like me to see, I'd be very happy to attend.
We voted on the motion itself.
We will. So it brings us back to the motion as amended, with the adjustment to the brackets on the 4th item down, flora and fauna, and 3 councillors. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much, councillors. The 9.1 was the next one you suggested we bring forward. Councillor Miles. So 9.1 is the minutes of the Inclusive Play Space panel meeting held 19 February 2019. Move Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Crassoy. Councillor Williams.
I'm just happy that it's progressing, Mr Mayor. Congratulate those involved in getting us to the stage. It'll be very valuable and useful. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to speak against? I think there's still some work to be done on funding on this matter, isn't there? And I think that the advice we received very early in the piece on this was that the playground was fully funded. Does anybody recall that discussion?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Williams, what do you recall from that?
Well, as you say, Mr Mayor, that it was anticipated that the playground would be funded through grants and a whole range of other activities, rather than from our consolidated revenue.
Councillor Crassoy?
No, that's correct.
Fully funded. Right. Except for the additional 50,000 we dedicated to it. All right. I think it'd be good for us to go back and see what the situation is with funding again. See if there's any more funding to be generated. There's also a discussion that later in the year we might hold a fundraiser for the inclusive playground. I think it's a great facility. Everyone wants to see it go ahead. Well, we need to generate some funds ourselves for that. So the suggestion is in September, we run a fundraiser, and I wondered if that might be something you would consider adding to the recommendation.
Most certainly, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so
If I may speak as well.
moved Councillor Williams and seconded Councillor Craswell. And so the words would be that we look for an opportunity sometime in September to generate some funding for this, maybe a community event, let's call it a community event, and to see if we can generate funds. That involves the community in this really worthwhile project as well. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I wasn't going to say anything about this, but I just want to say what a great initiative this is, and how excited I am that we are doing this. We have just recently got confirmation of a grant for $200,000 from the Everyone Can Play program, which is fantastic. We've already set aside $50,000 from this council. I'm hoping that we can do some fundraising and get some more, but you know what, if it turns out that we do need to tip some more money into this project, whilst it's not a discussion for now, I think we need to we really need to reflect on the fact that this is a very important initiative that everybody can play. Our playgrounds are not accessible, and there are people of all ages missing out. And so, whilst it might not look great on our budget, we need to. There are some things that we, as councillors, need to do, and decisions we need to make. And this is one of those. This is one of those ethical decisions where we say, we may have to take a hit on the budget, but we're doing something for the community and something for everyone. So I'm very pleased with the grants that we've received so far, and I would like to see more fundraising and more money from council. And I think at a future meeting we can have that discussion.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's unanimous. Could you record that as unanimous, please? We go back to 4.3. It's a report on legal matters March 2019. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded. Councillor Miles. Thank you, Councillor Miles. Is there any discussion on this, councillors? Councillor Williams? Page 9.
I was just wondering, in relation to 907-228, 9 Grey Street, the matter seems to now be concluded. I was just wondering what was the key issue that was at the court case. Is that
Through the gentleman.
share with me? Or?
Through you, Mayor. The key issues were scale and bulk, number of stories, the entry driveway, and landscaping criteria, the fenestrations, and also the roof form. The court has reserved its decision, and we're waiting for the outcome.
Councillors, any further discussion? Can I put the motion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, against, that's carried. Thank you. I think we're at 8.1. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor.
23.
8.1.
8.1, yeah. Exact miles.
Hold on, just 1 moment. I'll just drag my feet a bit, Councillor Miles. Councillor Miles.
I'll move recommendation not as written in the business paper. The council endorse the following inclusion in the draft.
Hold on, is there a seconder?
Oh, we haven't read. I haven't read my motion yet.
I think we've got a second.
We have a second.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
That a council endorse the following inclusion in the draft model code of meeting practice. That council do not change frequency or the start time of meetings. B, that there is no change to the close time of meetings. C, that pre-meeting briefings be limited to matters in the agenda. D, sorry.
D is matters on the agenda.
Yeah, no, I'm listing my numbers out, sorry. I know I'm a bit quick. D, that as read in G, S15.14 be included, in which states all chairpersons of meetings of council and committees of the council are authorised under the code to expel any person, including any councillor, from the council or committee meeting for the purposes of section 10.2b of the Act. And E, that the change of the order of business as outlined in the body of this report, change of the order of business as prescribed by the, outside of those changes as prescribed by the draft code. And the 2, council endorse the draft code of meeting practice as set out in attachment 1, including the recommendation of non-mandatory provisions on the purpose of public exhibition as read.
Excuse me, we just can't see it on this screen very well. I'll have to take a moment to have a look. Was it your intention to take out D?
D as read in the paper.
Is it to be deleted or is it to be in?
No, it's to be in. Sorry.
The old D is the new C.
It's just got lines to it. All right.
Okay.
Understood? Is that in accordance with how you understood?
Sure.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question about it before you see? If you were talking about the meeting frequency being twice a month, as opposed to the recommendation, which is for the meeting once a month, and then on the alternate fortnight that there be briefings and workshops.
That's removed in part E.
No. But so my thing is with D, where you've said pre-meeting briefings to be limited only to matters on the agenda. I'm just curious how that's going to work.
If that is the case, my point is that briefings be held in the same structure that they are at the moment. So if we want to remove that wording to pre-meeting briefings be held, or in fact they could probably be removed.
So you're saying that we can still have the pre-meeting
as we do now, as
per
current practice.
As per current practice. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah.
Well spotted.
All right. Did you wish to speak further?
I will, Mr. Mayor, just to give some reasoning. It's been raised. This has been raised before, and my thoughts on this haven't changed. I dare say we're going to run late tonight, probably on this particular item. Councillor Sanderson has sent around some alternate recommendations as well. Some of them I agree with, some of them I don't. My point being is that we need to, given the time limit that's been placed on us adopting this code, we need to put this out to exhibition. And if we do need to fiddle around the edges, I think the substantive issues that Councillor Sanderson has raised, albeit a bit late in the piece for us to consider tonight, some of them have merit, some of them I would disagree with, but putting that out to the public at this stage, we did, I think that we would contemplate either delaying the exhibition of this draft until we as a council body can get a solidified view on what should go into that draft that goes to the public. In that case, we're going to end up adopting the pro forma from the government, or we can put out a substantively similar to what we have now, but taking into consideration some of the recommendations by the state government in terms of the code. And I think that that's probably a good basis for which Councillor Sanderson's raised many points, and if we want them dealt with, we can probably deal with the complex issues that have been raised as submissions, which I'm sure will be brought back to council and dealt with appropriately. What I'm trying to avoid doing is putting to the public a document that is going to differ substantially, and I think reading the room does differ substantially to what we would want to see in the code, and then having to go and re-exhibit again. I think that would be a situation we don't want to find ourselves in. My reading of the situation is that council is not so short of work that we should be changing the meetings to once a month. We do a lot of work in this chamber every 2 weeks that I genuinely don't think can be dealt with in a single meeting a month. And I understand that there'll be more time for briefing, but there is a point at which you do have to get in here and hammer a couple of things out. I think that our process with regards to that is actually quite good. I think that starting the meetings at 7:30 gives the public the opportunity to get home, do the kids, do whatever they need to do, and get up to council if they do want to come and speak to council. I think that the situation that we have for public addresses to the meeting doesn't need to be changed to this public forum for a number of reasons. Number one, I think that if you have a issue that you want to raise with council, as it is, you can do exactly what is being prescribed by the code, which is you can make the application, and it doesn't have to be an item on the agenda. You can come here and you can address council. We had one about 3 meetings ago about the situation on Ferry Street, the traffic situation on Ferry Street. So if you are a member of the public and you do want to address council, you have the opportunity to do that now. I don't see any reason to have a public forum at the beginning of a meeting, listen to everyone that wants to listen to speak about an item, and then it's out of your mind by the time you get to the item in the agenda. Equally, it concerns me that there are, in 4.7, for example, that no more than 2 speakers are permitted to speak for or against each item. We've had pretty heated nights in this chamber where we've had 10 or so speakers, and it concerns me that you would have a public forum restricting people's ability to take a view on something. I get that it does chew up council's time, but equally, knowing the community as I think we all do, I think that there's a lot of people that would be would feel as though their voice was being taken away from them if they weren't being given the opportunity to speak on certain issues. So that's my reasoning, and I understand there will be discussion about the alternate motion that Councillor Sanderson has put to us today. I just think that if we try and nut that one out tonight, it's going to be a very long meeting, and that
It's need to be.
these issues will be able to be dealt with if we put it out tonight under this motion, which is substantially the same as how we operate at the moment, with a lot of the recommendations from the OLG, that we will be able to come up with a good option that we're all happy with after the consultation period. So that's my reasoning, and hopefully we can get something across the line, but I feel that this might be spirited.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against?
I just have a question.
Question, Councillor Cresswell.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the General Manager. What is the accepted best practice from the Office of Local Government and, say, LG New South Wales or other councils that you know of as far as the frequency of council meetings?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as I understand, majority now of councils hold their meetings once a month, and I think that they've made that move because they see benefit in that. But again, it's a matter for each individual council to decide how they wish to run their meetings.
And so just following on from that, what is the benefit that they see?
I think that through you, Mr. Mayor, potentially efficiencies in how meetings are administered, enabling time for the writing of reports, enabling the time to give consideration to matters would be some of the key points.
And just lastly, because just jogged my memory, we as councillors have had this to look at, read over and consider for how long?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
4 months? Yeah, quite a while. And we've had how many briefings/workshops on it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, two this year.
2 this year, where we've given our feedback and sought your advice and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to speak against? Councillor Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, the reason I prepared the alternate motion was to bring all the facts out individually, so that they're all there to be seen, and we could debate each one individually. That's the way we'll come to the most sensible solution as far as this goes. Some of these things I didn't have a particularly fixed position on. I happen to agree with Councillor Miles on the frequency of meetings. At the same time, there is a lot of drafting errors, both in the optional recommendations of the state government, and there are items missing from the recommendation. We only received this report with the recommendation on Thursday night. I spent most of Sunday going through the model code to come up with what I've managed, which I got up at about 3 o'clock this morning to put that motion together. Now, it is long, but it is quite simple. And if you would like, I'm very happy to take people through it. But perhaps a better way to do it is that I will put this as an alternative, suggest that my motion be taken as a motion to be brought up in the event of this one's failure. Foreshadowed motion, I apologise for getting the word at the time. And then I will go through the details. And I think this is a far better process that if I can have the opportunity to go through all of the items that I have raised. There are, as I said, significant drafting errors that really need to be corrected, and I think there are some benefits in the approach I take. Like Councillor Williams, we've always taken the feel that the local government should be above all open, and we want to open things up for the process. There are things that we can do to make that occur, Also, I think there are points where the drafting can be improved, where we can avoid delays. And as far as some of the finer points, the way I've drafted it, there is plenty of opportunity for people to suggest amendments, and it'll be the amendments that carry the day.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak for the motion? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I congratulate Councillor Sanderson on the detail that he goes in, and I've read it in detail, and I don't think the substance of his motion or alternative motion negates the key elements which we're debating tonight. I think Council needs to take on board those areas which he spent a lot of time on finding where there's errors and a better way of articulating what's been said. But from my position, I think what Councillor Sanderson is putting forward is when you distill it down, it's probably not too different to what we're talking about here. I support fortnightly meetings. I don't see the need to change the times, as Councillor Miles has pointed out. Pre-meeting briefings, well, I think if I had my way, I'd strike them out because I think it's an anathema to good, transparent governance. I'm glad to see that we're not going to be having workshops on the second Monday, because I think that again, and the real issue that I had with what was being proposed underneath this was that the community are going to be excluded from the workshops, they're going to be excluded from the briefings. I stood very passionately for election to this council on the basis of transparency. I saw the previous council tended to do a lot of its business before it came into the meeting, and I wouldn't like to see this council revert to that process of only using the council meeting to rubber stamp what was taking place behind closed doors. Because I believe the community deserve to know not only the decision we make, but the rationale, the evidence, and the information which council has gathered to make that decision. And it would be my preference to do a lot of that in the council meeting itself, where we get reports, we get information, so the public can see the basis for our decision making. So I support our current process, with the exception of pre-meeting briefings, but I can't see that being removed. So I'll have to support that reluctantly. But I'm about transparency. I think our current process provides that for us. And I wouldn't like to see us go into a process where a lot of council's information and decision making is done behind closed doors. I don't think that's the role of councillors. I appreciate the staff's desire and ability to identify efficiencies and savings, and that's their job at an administrative level. I think the council body itself needs to be out there and up front on a very transparent basis. And I think the way we operate at the moment gives us that transparency, allows lengthy debate, and for the life of me, if you look back over the last 18 months, I can't see how you can condense the two meetings into one and still be able to finish on time on most of the evenings. I don't know how you would save a large amount of time on report writing if you had one meeting, because it's still the same number of issues you're dealing with, the same number of reports needed to be provided. I'd probably compromise in one area. I'd be happy to go to computerised agenda papers and things if the paper-based system clogs up. So I do support the motion. I think council needs to take on board those technical issues and the issues which Councillor Sanderson has spent a lot of time discovering and documenting.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion? For the motion?
Mr Mayor, I'd like to make some amendments to the motion if I could.
Oh, very good. What are your amendments, Councillor Sanderson?
Amendment 1 to do with the adoption of clause 3 of the code, and this is the difficulty I have with this, the way the motion has been put, that it makes the amendments I propose somewhat difficult. I'd like to amend clause 13.13, which is to do with expenditure of funds that arise out of a notice of motion, and the reports that the General Manager might give on those. People
So
have
could I just check, are you reading the motion that's in the paper, in the council papers for tonight? And you're dealing with
Well, that's the difficulty.
3.13.
That's the difficulty I have from the way this motion is put. It makes it extremely difficult to amend.
Sorry, no, it's just a question. Could you tell us what we're dealing with in the paper and what page it's on?
Well, I don't think it's in the paper. It's in the document that I distributed. In the detail.
So if you want to amend the motion,
Well,
can you work from the papers which are on the table?
Okay. Well, in relation
It's not
to
a demand. It's not a demand, Councillor. Excuse me. It's just a question because that will make it easier.
Could I view the motion as it is before we
Okay. So item that you want to look at is
it will be 111 times.
what's the number you're working to there?
Well, that's the difficulty I have. It's not numbered there because the motion doesn't specifically include.
There is a 3.13 in the paper which is on page 39.
No, I'm referring to 3.3 or 3.13 in the model code of meeting practice. This is the 3.13 I'm referring to. Now, that would need to be adopted if we're adopting the material on pre-meeting briefings, which I presume is in the motion.
Notice of motion expenditure of funds.
Sorry?
Notice of motion for the expenditure of funds from works and/or services. Is that what you're reading from?
Yes, that's the one.
Yes, that's in page 39 of the papers.
That's all mandatory.
No, it's not.
And it begins a notice of motion with expenditure of funds on works and/or services. That's how it begins.
Where's blue?
Page 39.
Can I ask a
No,
question?
sorry, just
Yeah, well, okay, there's a non-mandatory recommendation, 3 point...
is that the one we're dealing with?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. In B, as you'll see from the material I produced, after we've said defer consideration of the matter by the council, I want to insert for a reasonable time to prepare a report on availability of funds or for implementation of the motion if adopted, then comma, to such a date as specified in the notice pending preparation of such a report.
What does...
So, if I may, Mrs. Mayor, I think that the issue here is that Councillor Sanderson is. This goes to my point. The recommendation in the business paper, as suggested by the council staff, is quite broad ranging, whereas you're wanting to make specific changes to the code itself. What I'm suggesting is that the specific changes that you've made to the code and done the work on probably should be put to the council staff as a submission because of the complexity. Because if we try and debate every single amendment that you put tonight, we will be here much later than 11:30. All I'm suggesting is that perhaps, given the complexity of what quite reasonably you could put as a amendment to the motion that you would like for council to include that in section 13.3b for a reasonable time and insert the wording, and we could do that one at a time. Or you could nitpick the ones that you think are substantial and put them in. My point being is that I think we've got the opportunity to have that discussion and do that at a later date. That this is putting it out to consultation with, let's say, the overarching themes of what the council is trying to get without delving into the minutiae, which is going to take a very long time and probably won't be done tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Let's go back to Councillor Sanderson and thank you for trying to help us clarify. I appreciate that. Councillor Sanderson.
Well, I think it might be preferable in the process to put the amendments separately. If I'd been quicker to my feet, I didn't get up because of the hesitation we had at that point in the proceedings. But my idea had been that if I had got this up as an alternate motion, we could have dealt with these individually. The process has made this far more difficult than it needed to be. So I would like to put that particular amendment. I think people have it in front of them in the material I've prepared.
Councillor Sanderson, if I may, one of the problems is we haven't read the material that you prepared and gave to us because it arrived very late in the day for most of us who didn't get to look at it until the very end of the day, and we haven't had a time to consider it properly. That's the problem we have. I appreciate the work you did. Again, hand on heart, I really appreciate the work and your expertise you put into it, but we haven't had sufficient time to assess it. So if you would like to make an amendment to this, is that the amendment you wish to make, which is up on the board at the moment? Is that your amendment?
For a reasonable time to compare, a report on the availability of funds for improving or implementing the motion if adopted.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Councillor Miles moved the motion, didn't you?
Another question.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Who's your question of?
Of Councillor Sanderson. What does that actually change? That particular sentence. It just seems like
Councillor
semantics.
Sanderson.
I'm trying to.
Mr. Mayor, it probably won't change a lot as the council exists at the present time, but prior to the appointment of the new general manager, we had quite a number of matters where we were waiting for reports to slow up proceedings. I think it's important to say that if it is necessary for a report to be prepared where there is any question about the the expenditure necessary for a motion to be implemented, that report be prepared in a reasonable time, so that that cannot be used as a means of delaying that process. That is the reason for that motion.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Williams. May I ask, Councillor Miles, is this something that you would consider including in the motion?
We're all
Mr. Mayor, I just we will at this rate go through each one of these amendments one at a time, which we can do.
Is this something you would consider adding into your motion?
I would prefer not, because I don't see the point in that
All right.
particular.
Okay. All right. So we need to debate the amendment. Do you wish to speak further?
Mr. Mayor, I think I've made them.
All right.
And I think I'm quite happy for the amendment to be put at this point in time.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll put the amendment. Those in favour? Against? Let me try it again. Those in favour? Against? I'd be happy to have that amendment included as a second vote. Councillor Sanderson,
Can I put a second amendment?
No.
if you wish.
Well, sorry. Can I just understand what happened there?
Sure.
I may have got it mixed up.
Oh, no, please go ahead.
I'd like to ask the question.
Yep.
I did not support the amendment. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. I used a casting vote to support the amendment.
Well, I never got actually a chance to speak to it, which didn't seem fair.
You can speak to it, won't change anything, but it's been had. Unfortunately,
Can I speak to
we've
it
missed
then?
it. No, we've missed it. It's happened. Once we voted on it, we can't go back.
But I think
We'll make sure you get a chance to speak next time.
we'll give you
a
with
chance
respect,
next
Mr. Mayor, I was denied a right to speak, and
No, you weren't denied to speak. You didn't ask for a right to speak. And we put the motion. Once you put the motion, that's the end of it, and we put the motion. I'm sorry, but that's the procedure.
I thought the procedure was to ask if anyone was for or against.
I did.
Well,
We spoke for and against it.
no. Okay.
All right, so Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could put the second amendment if I turn to the business paper so that we don't get confused about the page numbering and so on. Yes. In the code or the draft code of conduct on page 42, item clause 3.3, I would like to delete and replace with the words the general manager or a member of staff.
Could you just put us back to the clause again, please?
On page 42.
3.33?
3.33.
Yep.
There's no 3.33 42.
There is.
In the business paper.
Business paper. This is the motion.
All right, Councillor Sanson, please go ahead.
Okay. What I would like to do there is delete clause 3.33 and replace it with the general manager or a member of staff nominated by the general manager may rule that a matter to be dealt with at a pre-meeting briefing session be dealt with in the absence of the public for reasons of confidentiality.
Okay, I think that's 3.34 in the business, in the paper you're referring to.
No, it's not.
3.
No, I'm
3.33.
deleting 3.33
I'm just deleting 3.3
and replacing it with that.
Okay.
Yep.
So if we could look up on the general manager or a member of staff nominated by the general manager.
Sorry, 3. No, my correction. I have it as 3.33 because the version that I'm working on is renumbered in the paper, or it's possibly been renumbered a different way.
What are we dealing with in the business paper, Councillor?
3.34.
Right.
The general manager. I apologise. No, it is 3.33. I was right the first time.
You wanted to delete 3.33
Yeah.
And replace with
and
another clause.
replace it with
Yeah.
basically what's on 3.34.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, is the
No.
clause, Councillor, is the
No,
clause...
it's totally different.
Councillor,
Totally different.
excuse me, sorry. Is the clause that's up there correct?
The general manager or a member of staff nominated, by the general manager may rule that matters to be dealt with in a pre-meeting briefing session be dealt with in the absence of the public for reasons of confidentiality. That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
So what's your intent there?
Look, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Williams and I have long been of the view that our pre-meeting briefings, where possible, should be open to the public. And we've had examples of items such as the matter to do with Prince Edward Street in Gladesville, where we had a briefing that was given at the pre-meeting briefing, and tomorrow night, I should check with Mr. Carruthers, I believe that meeting is being repeated. I will feel obliged to go there because members of the public will be going, which means I'll be cancelling another engagement that I did have. But the reason is that I think for efficiency and also for the openness of local governance, that it's important that the general public should be able to observe as much as possible that this council does. And I mean, certainly if there's a matter in there that involves confidentiality, I'm very happy for the public to be excluded. But at other times I take the same line as Councillor Williams has consistently done in this council, that all our action should be open to the public as absolutely possible.
Very good. Are we going, councillors, do you see the need to debate every single one of these items all the way through the evening? Councillor
I'd like
Collins?
to speak if I may.
Yes?
Is there a second?
No, I'm asking a question though. I'm looking for an answer from the councillors
Perhaps I'll...
to that question. Do we need to debate every single item?
I believe so.
All right. Councillor Collins, did you have a comment?
Yes, I'd just like to speak
On the amendment?
on the amendment, yes, if that's okay, and I can speak generally. Look, we have a motion that is ready to, I think, pass. If we're just going to go through semantics of things all night, this particular motion about the pre-meeting briefings, whilst I don't support it, I think it's at least a substantial issue to discuss. I would request that we, if there are issues of particular relevance that are substantially different, such as not having private, meetings, briefings closed to the public, I think that's worth discussing. As for semantics on all these motions, if we get bogged down on this, it's going to be a very late night. If we can just deal with the
So you're against
substantial issues.
this? You're against this amendment?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I'm not finished. If I believe I have some more time.
You do. Go ahead.
And
As long as you're speaking against the amendment.
yeah, I am speaking against the amendment because I think we're going to get bogged down in this detail. All I would like to, I will say that on the issue of private briefings, there are times when councillors are given briefings that I don't know why the public would even want to go there. There's nothing top secret and of interest. It is just simply a private briefing, and it is an opportunity for councillors to openly gather information without debating and ask questions that they might not otherwise ask in a public forum. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and I can assure anyone in the public they are far from exciting, and no one's missing out on anything. But I'd also like to take this opportunity to say that I would ask everybody to be mindful that if we get bogged down in semantics all night, we're going to be here for hours. And if we can just stick to the substantial issues, such as this one, I'm quite happy to debate this issue. Then we can be out of here in half an hour. And so maybe we could make that
Councillor
happen.
Collins.
Thank you.
Is anybody wishing to speak for?
I just have a question.
Who's your question of?
Well, it's through you to the General Manager, I think, Mr Mayor,
You-
and I did
Councillor
ask
Prasoy.
I did ask it earlier in the briefing, but just for... Do you stand up for questions? Sorry.
Just, for everyone's sake, this and the series of things in it, while I wouldn't know because I didn't have a chance to read it because of the timing, may all have some really valid points. My question to you, General Manager, is based on the fact that we were given this at the 11th hour and there are other amendments to be put in here, what's the timing on deferring this till a later date, and what are the implications of doing that? Because this is getting really messy, and I don't care if we're here till 11:30 and everyone keeps saying we all want to get home. That's fine. I don't care. We can sit and debate it all night. But what about just deferring it and, as Councillor Williams likes to say, just get it right instead of this back forth. This is really, quite frankly, sloppy.
General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So we have the draft meeting code of practice, and councils have until the 14th of June to have adopted the meeting code of practice if they wish to add other elements to that on top of what are the core or mandatory components of that. The process is once the meeting code of practice is endorsed for public exhibition, it needs to go out for a period of 42 days to receive submissions. So there's a public exhibition period, then a total of 42 days to receive submissions. Then a report would come back to council for council to consider all submissions received. Under the current time frame, we would be coming back to council on the 8th or 9th of June, which brings us in before the 14th of June deadline. If, for whatever reason, council decides to defer consideration of this report tonight, what it would mean is that the next meeting that this would, scheduled meeting that this is able to come back to would be the 13th of May, which would mean that the 42-day submission period would extend past the 14th of June deadline. What that would mean is that council would automatically be adopting the model code of meeting practice as set out by the Office of Local Government until council decides what it wishes to do, if it wishes to add other elements to that model code of practice. So the short story is if we work within the current time frame, we'll have a model code of practice, meeting code of practice for Hunters Hill. If not, we can just simply adopt the Office of Local Government model code, and then once we have an agreed code, then council can then adopt that.
Not much.
Yes, Mayor.
Does that answer the question?
So the short answer is not much.
Not much. Just means delaying it a little bit. All right. So, who'd like to speak for the motion? The amendment, excuse me.
The amendment, yes, Mr Mayor. I don't find council business boring or tedious, and I think the community have the right to understand, as I've always said, the information and the basis for our decisions. I'll leave it up to the community as to whether they think they wish to engage in finding out what council's basing its decisions on. I wouldn't try and preempt their views, so I'm very keen to make sure that those briefings can be made available to the community to view them and make their own decision on whether they want to gather that information. I find a lot of what we find out there very informative and would help the community understand our decision-making processes. So I'm very much an advocate for having these as public events, except for obviously confidential issues.
Thank you, Councillor. Who would like to speak for the motion?
The amendment.
The amendment.
Against.
I just say for.
Against? Yep. Against? Councillor Miles.
Oh, well, I will. I wasn't going to, but yeah, I don't see any reason for this. And to echo Councillor Collins, this is going to go for a long time if we debate this one at a time. I think that if this is the path we're going down, then we're going to defer it.
Anybody wish to speak for? Against? Any further discussion? Right, a reply?
Yeah, I'll do an extremely quick right of reply. Look, this can be a fairly brief process. If the best reasons that Councillor Collins and Miles can give is that it's going to be timely, I'll give them the relief that my next amendment will be not, or won't be required because you're not requiring the public forums, and that's where a lot of my amendment was. So if they're not included, that will exclude a lot of the amendments I would propose. Again, you know, it's not an argument that it'll take too long. The argument is what's the best answer for our code of meeting practice.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I just check that we've got your amendment correct? Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. I'll put the amendment. Those in favour of the amendment? Against? That's lost. Councillor Craswell.
Mayor, I'd like to speak against the motion as put by Councillor Miles. Are we back to that point yet?
No.
We are.
We are.
Which motion was that?
The original motion.
You want to go back to the original motion?
Thank you.
Okay. I thought we might be heading for another amendment.
Well, we might
Well,
have.
let's go back to the
But
original
I jumped up first.
I'm sorry.
So-
Sorry, you beat me to the gun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Because I just want to bring it back on track here for a little while.
Right.
Now, in preparation for tonight's meeting, as all councillors know, we do spend quite some time reading the business papers and the reports that are put to us by council officers and senior staff. And so that's what I did. And having had the model code of meeting practice for some time now, I've also looked at that. I attended the workshops and briefings and gave my feedback at those. And the recommendations that I've put to us here by the council, I'm assuming, well, no, I know, are put because the council, senior staff, management, general manager, feel that this is how we'll do a better job as a council from our management of our time and our resources and our finances. And so that's why I'm speaking against all of the changes that you made to the original recommendation that's in the paper here. But further to that, I will not support amendments that I haven't had an opportunity to really digest, that have just been thrown at me on the fly about a changed motion already. This is too important, and I think we should defer.
Okay, are you foreshadowing deferring, or do you want to put the motion that it's deferred?
I'd like to put the motion or foreshadow. I don't quite know the order.
Put the motion.
But I'd like
Just a motion, but yeah, what's a motion?
You need to do it if you're going to do
I'd
it.
like to foreshadow to defer.
You need to do it if you're going to do it now.
I need to put a motion to defer.
Yeah, if you're going to do it.
Well, that's what I'd like to do because
Right.
I think we've just drifted away. Like, this is too messy.
Do you have a seconder for the motion to defer? That lapses, unfortunately. I think it's a good point you raise. So back to Councillor Sanderson. Thank you, Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I have a further amendment with respect to Councillor Crassoy. I am trying my best to get this done as well as we possibly can. There was one item that was completely neglected in the business paper. That relates to clause 3.10 of the Code of Meeting Practice, which appears on the page 38 of the business paper. There was an insertion that should have been done there. The council is to specify a time that, or the way it should read,
I'm not. Whereabouts?
page 38, clause 3.10 under the heading giving notice of business to be considered a council meeting. There is a blank there, which ahead of business days before the meeting is held, which relates to the time that a notice of motion must be provided. Presently it's about 3 days. I believe there was discussion to make it 4, so that 4 is completely consistent with all of the work that has been done. So I'd like to move an amendment that 4 be inserted in clause 3.10.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Is there a seconder? Councillor Williams. Councillor Miles.
Question through you, Mr. Mayor, if
Thank
I
you.
may. Given that 4, I understand it is the recommendation of the OLG in their draft, is it not?
There's no recommendation.
There's no recommendation of day?
3, Mr. Mayor, it's the council specify the
We have to
notice
specify.
period. Yeah.
Okay.
Any further discussion needed on this? I'll put the motion that we had in 4 days. Those in favour? Against? That's unanimous. Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could move on to the next amendment, I note that I don't have to make any amendments now that public forums section has been left out. So we will move on to what was in the original papers, or the original Code of Meeting Practice was clause 5.14. To do with the forum at a meeting,
Please.
and
47, yep.
okay. Yes, look, there's a significant error in the drafting of that non-mandatory provision. If we are going to adopt it, what I would suggest is that, as it appears in the business paper, on the second line, the word may should be made will. The reason for that is that I think it sets too low a bar for a council meeting to be cancelled in the event that there's a doubt about a forum being informed. I think we need to have, I don't think it's good enough that there's a couple of apologies and you can't contact a third councillor in order for, and that is the reason that the meeting's cancelled. I would think that needs to be amended.
Councillor, is that correct, the amendment as it sits there?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
5.13?
That's correct.
Councillors, do we need any discussion of this? Councillor Collins.
Yes, there's absolutely no way that you could know the future. That's why it's may. You could not put will, because you would never at any point in time know whether or not you'll have a quorum. So this is, I mean, again, it's semantics, but you can't just put that in because how can you know if even the apologies turn up? This is semantics. It's ridiculous. We're just wasting time. You can't put will.
Anybody wishing to speak
You
for?
can never know that.
For the amendment? Anybody wishing to speak against the amendment? Right, a reply?
Yes, Mr Mayor, look, I would rather not have to give a right of reply, but quite obviously, Councillor Collins doesn't have my legal expertise. You need will there. The reason being is that it is very obvious that you could be confident that a meeting will not proceed. In the case of this council, if you've received 4 apologies, then you could be quite confident that a meeting wouldn't proceed. If you received 2 apologies and 2 people you weren't able to contact, there'd be doubt as to whether the meeting would proceed, and that's why I believe that the will needs to be there. I mean, I'm sure under the leadership we currently have, that would never arise, but there is potential that for political reasons someone could take advantage of a situation like that. And I mean, I think just as a matter of sensible legal precedent, that we need to get that right. I'd hate to see some other council where that sort of thing might occur, to copy what we have and make a mistake on it. So I think having that will there is critically important, and I'm surprised that that wasn't picked up by the drafters.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we need further discussion on this point, councillors? Any further questions, any clarifications? I'll put the motion. Those in favour of the amendment, rather? That's passed. That's carried. Against? Thank you. Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, Mr Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to make another amendment to the motion. That is below G, I think it will appear on the same page. No, my apologies. Yes, there is an amendment. I'm sorry, let me try to figure out where this one is. Forgive me. Yes, there is a note to say where there's a lot of extraneous material about clauses 14 and 15. So clauses 14 and 15 appear on pages
61. 61.
Up to 65 and 66, Jim.
Okay. And
Which page are you working from?
yeah, okay. Clause 15. Okay.
It's 14 and 15, so.
Clause 14 is on page 61.
Yeah,
it goes
I
all
don't know
the way
which
to
one it is,
66.
though, whether it's the renumbered or the unnumbered. Look, if you like, I'll move on to another one and then we'll get back to it later.
Right, let's not do that.
Let's do them all.
Please have a seat. Take your time.
Okay.
We'll wait.
My apologies.
That's all right.
No, you're on when the meeting's cancelled. No, with respect to
No, I've gone right through the 15.
Is this the note?
Yes,
Do we need to delete a note?
we can. Yeah.
That is already in the original motion as well.
Okay.
Just to point out. That's
All right, good. That one appears
in
to
the
have
original
been.
motion that's put already.
Okay, all right. So don't worry about that one. Yes, there was. Yes, Mr Mayor, the next amendment I would like to make is on item as labelled 521,
Page, please.
page 48. The 521 in the draft published in the business paper, with respect to webcasting a meeting, says a recording of each meeting in the council and committee of council that is retained by council, or is to be retained on the council website for at least 12 months, which is in line with the supplementary provisions included in the Code of Meeting Conduct. But I wonder whether we should be increasing that. So I would suggest that an amendment be put in there to say that for at least 4 years and be available on application beyond that time, just so that the records of meeting are available for basically for long as they're likely to be accessed, and I'd certainly feel that it'd be appropriate for stuff to be available on the website for at least 4 years, being the normal term of council, so that we can be monitored in our performance. So that's that particular amendment.
So we'll just have a look. So at least 4 years. I just have a question, if I might. We might need to refer that to our IT person through the general manager. Just a bit of question through the general manager. Is that likely to cause a problem if we're holding that much information in a website? Maybe.
I'll have to take that on notice, Mr. Mayor, and see what our capacity is. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much data that is.
May I ask?
Yes.
At this point,
Do you have a question?
I think yes. Well, I think it's all on YouTube, and so we don't have. I don't think it's on the website anyway. So perhaps you could just change it to indefinite. It just stays up there. So it's not on. Is it on our website?
No, it's a link to YouTube.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
So we're not actually
Not storing that information.
it. So we need to just change it to just make it available rather than put it on council's website because it's not on our website. And maybe just put it, indefinitely. It doesn't. It's YouTube.
So the amendment we're dealing with is for 4 years. Do you need any further discussion?
Well, I'd speak against it. Yes.
All right.
I'd say just have it indefinite. We don't need to put a timeline on it. It's on YouTube. It stays there. It doesn't cost us anything. So let's not take it down.
We're in control of what's on YouTube.
Yes.
Councillor Sanderson, indefinite?
I'm happy for it to be indefinite if
Is there any further discussion needed? Can I,
Just a quick question.
Councillor Craswell?
On our website, is all it is a link to the YouTube channel, or is it every meeting has a link to the YouTube channel?
That's my reading.
Yeah. So there is still an impact on the website. It's just about providing the links. But so when people come to the website to look something up, they're going to see 4 years worth of links. Is that right? So that's my question.
Well, we've got 20 years worth of business papers. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just links.
General Manager?
What's the problem?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think if we can provide the links.
Yeah.
I think with anything on YouTube, you can Google it and it will come up. So I think.
But this is referring to our website. So.
We can create links.
All right. So, Councillor Sanderson, indefinite?
provided it's technically feasible.
So let's have a look at what it says here. We're still on the 4 years. So how would you like to see that changed, Councillor Sanderson?
Well, we said at least 4 years, so it can be longer. So I think we can leave the wording as it is.
Can I put the motion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I'm running out of these, so it's not going to be quite as long as we thought. My other concern was we had cut the items in the order of business down. So perhaps at this stage, could I ask a question of the General Manager, whether, or through you, Mr. Mayor, to the General Manager, whether the General Manager is satisfied with the items? Because when you compare it with the...
You got a page that you want to refer to?
Yes, it's in the Code of Practice. It's 8.21. Or sorry, no, it's 8.2, which is renumbered to 1.
Page 31.
Page 52 of the.
Yep. Yeah. Is the general manager happy with that list, and whether the other thing we need to ensure that if we're not having the pre-meeting public forums, that the tabling and positions and the public address remain in that list, because the research I did suggest we should have a few more items in the agenda. So I just thought I should ask the general manager whether they're necessary. Through you, Mr. Mayor, of course.
Thank you.
So just through Mr. Mayor, I'm just comparing the model code with what's recommended. The aim of what was recommended in the report was to simplify the agenda items. And given that I think through Councillor Miles, the public forums back in, so if that was added into the order of business, with council reports, we've combined committee and delegates reports under that one heading, Councillor Sanderson, and then general business, and then questions with or without notice and confidential.
So addresses from the public would remain in, is that your suggestion?
That would be the
Yes, under Councillor
remains there.
Miles's.
And tabling of petitions would remain in.
A spelling mistake there, Councillor Sanderson's partitions and it should be petitions.
Petitions.
Just in case it's copied and pasted.
Did you miss that, Councillor Sanderson?
So the short answer is that you're satisfied with the items in the...
Yes.
All right,
I won't
so the
worry
ones
about
ruled
that.
out are now back in, is that correct?
Yep.
So Councillor Sanderson, that's your amendment?
Well, I'm satisfied if that's the case. There's no need for an amendment, is there?
No.
Okay. Then...
Right. Councillor Craswell.
Seeing as we're talking amendments, Mr. Mayor, could I just, we're here, right? Can I just suggest one small amendment to the acknowledgement of country? I'm not sure how long it's been since this has been respectfully had advice sought on it, but I do know that at the conferences I've been at lately, in acknowledgement of country, they'll often say elders past, present and emerging. So whether we just plonk emerging in there or whether we perhaps look at our acknowledgement of country, I don't know.
That's not part of our currently passed acknowledgement of country, which was put to council. That's not part of it, but we can consider it.
Yeah. But
Not here though.
No, well, okay.
Let's take some advice.
It's in here. But
With your indulgence, we will take some advice.
that's all.
Yeah. I'll give one of the people who suggested a call. All right. So, Councillor Sanderson, we're back to you.
Mr. Mayor, you'll be relieved to know that I've satisfied with those amendments. I'll have the motion to be good.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. So there are no further amendments. We've now got an amended motion. Councillor Miles.
Just in light of Councillor Craswell's comment there, I think that it's worth putting a further amendment to the end of this, that council review, formally review the acknowledgement of country, just so that there is no question about having to re-exhibit this again. So if that does need to be changed, we need to change it now prior to the draft going out to the public, or if that is the case, and that's the new protocol, then
I don't know if it's a protocol, but I've just
think that
noticed.
it's probably worth contacting the New South Wales Aboriginal Lands Council rather than
Look,
whoever came up
I
with
don't
it.
think that's necessarily part of this because we're dealing with just a line acknowledgement of country.
Yeah, but
We'll make sure that we've got
Specified down the
wording
It's in there.
It's in there. The wording's in there.
So I think that
Right.
we have to do that because we can't specify words and they're not.
It doesn't change what we do at the moment, does it?
It will.
I'm happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I'll put that amendment.
That
Those in
doesn't have to be
favour?
put, that's
Against?
the
That's
mover and
carried.
seconder.
Can we just make a note of the mover and seconder, please, for posterity?
Move on. Yeah.
Moved Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Williams. All in favour? Thank you. So if there are no further amendments, right of reply, Councillor Miles.
I didn't want to do that on the fly, but equally, and I was very tempted to defer the motion. I do want to get this out so that we meet our mandatory deadlines. I didn't want it to run over. As I said, there are elements of Councillor Sanderson's proposals that I agreed with and some that I didn't, but getting into the semantics of every little thing, that's fine. Got there in the end. Let's get this out, let's get it adopted.
Good, thank you. So I'll put the motion with amendments. Those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Councillor Sanderson, can I thank you very much for your work on that. I'm sorry we didn't have sufficient time in our days today to review it properly. If we've missed anything, please raise it to our attention again in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I just make a point, I did some, in that work, I did some research on how Lane Cove Council to approach it. And that was some considerable distance ahead of us in their development. And I think, the rush today has been a result of not getting that recommendation and not having the time to defer. We could have done it more comfortably, I guess, but I think at the end of the day, we've got a very good result.
Thank you. Councillors, we're moving to 8.2, monthly report on outstanding matters. Moved Councillor Collins, seconded Councillor Crassoy. Any discussion?
Just wanting to...
Councillor Miles.
Sorry. Just wanting to get an update on where we're at with the Bonnefon Road matter. I do notice that this report hasn't really substantially changed in some time, and given that that was quite a heated issue towards the end of last year, I haven't heard a hell of a lot. Maybe we'll get a bit more of an update about that timeline there.
Through the General Manager. General Manager.
Through Mr. Carruthers.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I think it's in there.
81. Page 81.
Page 81. It is earmarked for the May meeting.
Going to come to the main meeting.
Yes, that's right.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, page 92, 23/19. I'm just wondering, the terminology on delivering options, on options for delivering an all-weather playing surface. Does natural grass relate to all weather? Or are we just talking about artificial surface? As I understood Council's motion, the intent was to look at both options and come back with a
3319, is that correct? All weather playing surface posts.
Yeah. I thought we were going to get a report that covered both natural as well as all weather.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's playing surfaces.
Right. So that's not correct, or wording?
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
Let me just leave it with General Manager just for a minute.
just going to the motion that was put. It was all weather.
All weather playing surfaces. So through you, Mr. Mayor. So the report will come back and will canvass as outlined at last meeting, the quadruple bottom line. So looking at the environmental aspects, the community or social aspects, as well as the financial, and provide the options and the evaluation of those surfaces, sorry.
Councillor Williams.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, does that mean that it's only artificial turf that you're going to be considering, or does it mean a range of options?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll look at, for completeness, we'll look at all options.
Thank you, Mr.
All right, thank you. Any further queries? Councillor Collins.
On page 91, notice of motion, Reby Road. Can we just get an update that all those timelines have been met? All those.
Through you, Mayor.
Change?
That's the intent, and through the bulletin, we'll be following through all those timelines to keep the councillors up to speed with where we're at with that the project.
So do we have 3?
Like I said earlier in the
one.
evening, we've only received 1. We anticipate to receive another 2, by the end of this week. and to complete that timeline. Review those, I think the 9th of April from memory.
Is that tomorrow though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll intend to, the whole intent is to meet that timeline.
Okay, cool. All right.
Can I just, sorry, while I'm here, Bonifan Road, I apologise for the delay. Bonifan Road, it's intended for the next meeting. It's for the school holidays. The meeting will be in May. The intent there for you, the councillors to be aware of that, we'll anticipate to provide the residents, all residents in that street, approximately 2 weeks' notice of the council meeting and the council report as a courtesy. Not wait for the Thursday prior to the meeting, and then on top of that, we anticipate to also have the traffic consultant to brief council on those outcomes. From memory, there was 2 or 3 workshops facilitated by council officers, and numerous outcomes, and the 80% or 90% of the street were happy with the final plan, and that's the plan we're going to put to council, recommending that that goes to the RMS for adoption. That's what the anticipation is.
Any further discussion on 8.2?
Just a
Question, Councillor Cresswell.
I actually thought that had already come to council to go to the RMS.
No. The recommendation to receive and note. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. 8.3. Monthly report on Council Weekly Bulletin. Moved Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Williams. Any discussion? Question, Councillor Cresswell.
Just to say that they're really good. Thank you. I'm finding them really informative and helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, do you think that this is a move towards greater transparency with the community?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think it's an excellent opportunity for information to be shared quickly. It doesn't have to wait for a formal meeting or a report. And things unfold on a regular basis, so I think that's very useful. And if we make it verbatim available through the business paper, then the community can access it. I think that's a great way of sharing information. Thank you.
Yes, congratulations, General Manager. It's an excellent initiative, and it's helped me a lot. It's picked up a few things that we would have normally missed, I think. It's a great initiative. 8.4 is the next item, I think.
Page 16.
Report on the progress of the Combined Community Strategic Plan Delivery Program Operational Plan to December 2018. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Cresswell. Is there any comments or any discussion on this? Councillor Williams.
Just a minor issue, Mr. Mayor. If the tables could be made a little bit bigger in the future, there's plenty of space on the table. Just my weary eyes. Those with electronic.
I second that. Perhaps we could make a note about that as well. Thank you. Can I put the motion? Those in favour? Against? That's carried. It's unanimous. Thank you. We're up to 9.2. Just one moment, I'll find it. Report on councillor briefings, 25th of March. Moved Councillor Williams, was it? Then seconded Councillor Collins?
It's Councillor Miles.
So Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Collins. Any discussion? Councillor Williams.
Only Mr. Mayor, it provides none of the detail that we discussed nor the transparency I believe required. There have been previous ones which I've agreed to that have provided a lot of information. I'm not quite sure why this one's not.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. 9.3. The minutes of Floodplain Risk Management Committee. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Cresswell. Councillor Williams, could you speak to this and give us a bit of a rundown on this? Would you mind? I'd like some more information.
Yes, most certainly, Mr. Mayor. We've had 2 meetings now, and the first one was scoping and understanding what was going to take place. The last meeting we had, which is reported here, provided what I thought was an outstanding process which the consultants have gone through to be able to identify where the pressure points in our drainage system are, and be able to, quite amazingly, but computer technology these days doesn't amaze me much anymore, but the level of detail they can provide not only to council but to the individual resident as to where the flows go around their houses, through the garages, down into their basements or whatever. It's just quite amazing. And I think once they finalise the ground truthing of these models, which they're doing through taking where residents have reported flooding events of their property, they've interviewed and found the observations that the residents experienced, and then tested that against their model, and there's good correlation between where the residents thought the water was going and how the model represents that. So this will give us an enormously good and accurate foundation for then looking at what needs to be done to do several things. One is to inform those residents of potential for flooding, and then look through that process as to what needs to be done in terms of council's notification and or inclusion on relevant planning instruments. There's not a large number of residents that will be considered in this process because of the nature and topography of Hunters Hill. But I found it a very scientifically based, engineeringly accurate process they're going through. And when we get that information in detail, I think we'll be in a very good position to have a discussion with the residents that might be impacted by it. And then we can draw our conclusions as to what controls or otherwise we may put on our planning instruments. So, in a nutshell, I think it's a good investment, and it will give council a very solid basis and evidence-based to take that next step of engaging with residents as to how flooding may or may not affect their properties.
Just while you're standing, this is something we were required to do?
Yes, Mr Mayor, it's part of the government requirement that all councils have to prepare plans to identify and manage flooding in the floodplain and in their catchments.
When would you, excuse me, please go ahead. When would you anticipate we might have an idea of how this may impact on our budget for the next financial year?
Well, the process they're talking about, I think maybe, I don't know, through you, Mr Mayor, Mr Rufus might be better memory as to when, but I understood that the modelling will be completed by about September, and then from that we go to the next phase of working out how we move forward the data out of the modelling, and that's another 12 months.
Through you, Mayor, the whole intent is to have a final report, my understanding, towards the end of this year.
Yeah.
And then early next year, put it to council for adoption.
So that probably would make it into the following year's budget, or the 2021 budget.
I wouldn't anticipate to be a great budgetary issue, except for maybe planning the way that we deal with those particular properties if there's a drainage issue that we need to address, as opposed to just the way it is that that property catches water. So there may be some implication.
Could also be picked up through our assets review.
Okay.
Yeah. So
all right. Thank you, Councillor. Is there any further business that we need to attend to this evening? Councillor Miles.
I just thought that it may be worth, I know the election was a couple of weeks ago, but it may be worth writing to the local member, given he was elected at the recent, not 26th of March election, just as a 23rd of March election, just as a council congratulating him on his success.
Yes, seconded Councillor Collins. Everybody in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for the suggestion, Councillor. Any further business? Do you have any questions without notice? I'll call the meeting closed at 9:25. It didn't quite go as long as we'd anticipated, Councillor Stenison. Thank you very much.